Is that the only use of the glitch? Or?
Yep. You can use it otherwhere or in other places, but it's not useful in a speedrun. So this lion head usually comes to get me if I hug the wall. Yep, there he is. That guy just flights or goes through the wall. A lot of enemies can do that. So this game is actually pretty different for like an old school game. Well, I mean, I guess not. I guess old school games are more cryptic, but I had to talk to that person to trigger the next like main story event. Like that seems rare for like children's adventure games, to just talk to some random person in the town to trigger the next story event.
Well, the worst case on the games on you have to talk to the same person more than once.
Mm-hmm.
I hate those.
But I talked to that chick to enable the side quest to get Ibizmu's power, which is the ability to shrink. And while that doesn't sound very useful, it is extremely useful because it will break the game quite a bit. So first we have to get it, obviously, and we have to do a minigame, and that's where another case of RNG comes in. I can get extremely screwed over by the minigame, or I can just get a standard run. So there's no like, oh, I got a god run of that minigame. It's either I got an okay run, or that run just completely screwed me over. So we're gonna go back to the fisherman. I do a little trick there to prevent the falling animation. If you fall from a certain height, you'll get a falling animation that loses you like 2 seconds or so. However, if you walk off a surface and land, you will not get the falling animation. So I jumped on the little fence on the bridge there, and I walked off of it. So it's just a little thing that I think is cool that prevents the walking animation. And I'm sorry about my voice; it usually goes to hell whenever I do marathons. I mean marathon runs, because I'm just not used to talking this much, and my voice isn't used to it either. So sorry about the cracks and dryness. Not much I can do about it.
You ever get a break? I get you like a glass of water or something?
Yeah, I'd greatly appreciate some water. So this is Ibizmu. While he looks very incompetent and useless, that is quite the opposite. He's the most useful character in this game by far. And in 100% I'd do a little neat glitch here where I'd switch characters before playing this game, and I'd play the minigame with EA, which isn't intended, but that's a frame saver and it's only using 100%. So here's a minigame. I'm gonna need some audio. I need to hear where these fall. Oh, okay. Yeah, I can't be seen by him or else he'll drop bombs, and the odds of me taking damage are very high. Okay. I need 8 dumplings or candies, whatever. Just, yeah, set it down. Wow, that was really bad luck. So an average time for this is about 40 seconds. This is probably going to be worse because I'm getting pretty bad luck here. Well, it might be about the same. Yeah, 41 seconds, like every time. So, the power I just got is pretty useful, and I'll just let it speak for itself. So I now have the ability to shrink, and I move slower while I'm shrinked, and it takes time to shrink, so you'd think it'd be pretty useful for a speedrun, like you'd want to avoid shrinking as much as possible. It's quite the opposite though. So I'm doing a huge sequence break here. It may not seem like much, but it is a very large sequence break. I'm about to get the cucumber from this guy up here. I need the cucumber for the Kappa, because Kappas love cucumbers, to get the 4th miracle item. The 4th miracle item you get after beating all 4 dungeons prior to it. So, isn't good. Alright, so that's a mini Ibizmu slide. You're not supposed to move while sliding. No one knows how it works. The whole community is kind of baffled on it, but we all have our theories. My theory is that the programmers didn't give you collision with anything while you were transforming. So if you were somehow able to move while transforming, you'd have no collision and you'd be able to clip into things. So, hold on, where am I going? Okay, I think that's the right input, but that's my theory on it. I don't know if that's correct. No one really knows how it works, but it is extremely useful because it's going to be used quite a bit in this next dungeon. Speaking of which, up next is Ghost Toys, which is the hardest dungeon in any percent. Not so for 100%, that would be Festival Temple, which has the hardest slide in the game, but we're not going to be seeing that. However, Ghost Toys is pretty tricky in any percent. I have to do a random slide 2 times in a row. So what determines my clipping into a wall? I don't know. It seems random. It seems like it's based on position and distance, but sometimes it just seems completely random. Like, sometimes the game will decide to let me through the wall, and sometimes it won't. I should explain how I'm doing the slide as well. As I mentioned before, if you were paying attention, the inputs you need to do the slide are extremely precise. It's a 12 frame input, which isn't much, but then you have to do a 1 frame input. Or you'd rather have 12 frames to make a 1 frame input. And how you do it is, I'll explain it once I do the crane game, because there's a bit of waiting there. So this is the random slide that I have to do 2 times in a row. Again, I don't know what determines whether or not it lets me through. Okay. So this is the hardest jump in the game, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that. That's why I don't want to get that doll, because it loses me like 5 seconds. So I should probably do this first before I start talking, because I'll probably mess it up. Alright, so how the Abysmaru glitch is performed, Abysmaru slide is what it's called. You jump, you do not make any inputs in the air, you land. Upon landing, you have 12 frames to make a 1 frame input in any direction. You let the stick go back to a neutral position, you hit C up, and then that will give you a slide. Again, extremely precise inputs, and I have no idea how anyone found that trick. It just seems like the most random thing to stumble upon. But, I mean, Serpent found it, so he's pretty cool. So, a little fun thing. Much like the, holy hell, slide, thank you. Much like the fortune dolls disappearing, I can actually make that camera disappear forever. But I obviously don't want to do that because it's necessary to progress the plot. I did a little trick where I went into first person. I know it wasn't first person, but that's what I call it. I go into that camera mode, and while in that camera mode, animations can't play. And you usually play an animation when you get an item. So by being in that animation, or in that camera position, the animation didn't play, and I could move during the little "you got an item" dialogue boxes. However, if I left the room during those dialogue boxes, the item would disappear. I wouldn't get it, and that would be the end of the round. That isn't really a threat in any percent, because you need to do that slide again, and the odds are that you're not going to get that slide first try, and you're not going to get out of there before the dialogue boxes are still there. But and 100% you can just walk out of the room. There's nothing stopping you from doing it, so you have to wait for a little bit. Now the camera, what it does is it reveals ghosts. Again, I don't know if it's Japanese mythology, because Fatal Frame, I think, does that too. But here's an optional slide that I'll go for. That's pretty cool if I get it, but I didn't. It's only worth trying that for 1 try, because it's not that slow to kill the ghosts. But I can clip through that wall that was there earlier and go into the loading zone, but it's pretty precise. And again, if you don't get it on the first try, then it's not really worth the time.
How big is the speedrun community in this game?
Very, very small. I'm the only active American runner. It used to be me and Czar. I forget his name. I think it's Czar3565 on Twitch. But it used to be me and Czar. Annie Meowsers used to run this game. Serpent used to run this game, or Z-Lamp, sorry. And I think that's it. A lot of people are getting a growing interest in this game, because it's a pretty interesting speedrun. I mean, it's got cool glitches, it's pretty technically intensive, very little RNG, little cutscenes. A lot of people in Hash Goemon on the SRL IRC are joining in and looking to get into the run. I know Keymaker is one of the new ones, and I'm sure I'm forgetting everyone else. But I often get messages like, hey, I'm looking to run this game, and I was looking for advice and tricks and stuff. So it's growing very slowly, but at the moment I'm the only active American runner, so. Yeah. Oh yeah, shout out to HeHeX too. He's my prodigy. Alright, I can fall here, hopefully I don't, because that will lose a lot of time. I was gonna say I haven't fallen here in a long time, right before I fell. I should have, it would have been a lot funnier. Okay, now I'm just being a stupid fool. I kind of want low HP for this room, but it's not I mean, not for this room, for this dungeon, because I need to do a death ward. But 2 HP is risky. This is one of the few dungeons where you're at risk of dying, like the whole time, because everything is out to get you. I really can't believe that I fell there. I haven't done that in forever. Yeah, marathon unlock, of course. Alright, well, I'm gonna be on 1 HP. Should be fine. That's the falling animation I was talking about, by the way. It's very finicky. It is 100% random. I don't know what determines it. No one really does. So this room is pretty scary. If I fall, I'm pretty much dead, since I have 1 HP. If I didn't have 1 HP, I'd be in a lot better position, but we're good. So I should be fine, but those are famous last words, so we'll see what happens. So here's another key room, just killing things. Okay, I got a heal. That's actually pretty nice. I don't want another one though. That would be bad. And again, the music in this game is fantastic. Every single dungeon has like a fantastic track. If you have not heard the soundtrack for this game, I suggest you fix that.
It's incredibly chill, like musical, like love.
There's a lot of jazz in this soundtrack, which is awesome, especially in Festival Temple. That's probably the jazziest. And that's probably my favorite track too. It used to be Gourmet Submarine. No more. So here's the jump rope room. I should be able to take 3 hits here. That's really risky. I'm gonna go ahead and play it safe, not take that hit. And usually I wouldn't use the camera here because I should be able to memorize the pattern of this place, but again, it's a marathon, I'm just gonna be safe. Alright, cool. So I'm gonna grab this key and then death warp back to the beginning of the room. And usually I'm at 1 HP here and it's instant, but we had to play it a little safe. Now coming up is the pool room, or billiards, depending on how fancy you are. It's a pretty tricky room that can go well or poorly. I have yet to get a good pool room in a run, so I doubt it's going to change right now. Also, usually you can't jump in water because there's a little dip in animation. However, the water in here is really shallow, so you can just jump through it to prevent taking damage and to move slightly faster. Alright, I'd like Rio. Thank you. Alright, I'm going to focus for a bit here. That pink ball is always giving me some trouble. That's not the right ball. Orange. Here's where I can get to show off some MLG 6 shots. Oh, that was nice. That's going in the frag bit. That's not nice. Again, this is what happens when I don't get the pattern that I want. That's not gonna hit. Oh, it did hit. Cool. So that was a bad billiards room. I wasn't really expecting much else. And I have 9 extra Rio to spare. So I need 300 Rio here. If I'm under 300 Rio by the end of this dungeon, the run's over. Because the odds of me getting a Rio drop are very, very low. Also, if I fall in here, that's really bad. But I didn't, so that's cool. I'm gonna have like 6 Rio left over. Not even 4. Cool. One time I did a run and I was at 301 Rio, and that was pretty neat. Meaning if I had spent 2 extra Rio, the run would have been over. And you don't think about that when you're doing Rio hovers. You just kind of like mash B, mash B, mash B.
You get Rio after the big stun.
It's... Well, yeah, I get Rio after I spend the 300, but getting Rio after Ghost Toys is extremely unlikely. There's only like 3 enemies on the way to where you need to go next to spend the Rio, and the odds of you getting a Rio drop are not very high. Alright, so this is the Ghost Toys boss. One of the few bosses you can do perfectly. Like, easy every time, but again, I'm probably gonna mess it up. Did you get me more water, Studio?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, I thought I was gonna say did you, but
Oh.
Alright. Thank you anyways. I don't know the name of this guy. He's an early boing boss. All I do is expose his weak point and then attack him. Nothing much special about him. I think it's kind of a glitch that you can hit him twice in one phase, but I don't know. The timing on him is, the window on him, rather, is pretty large, so it doesn't seem like a glitch. I can get unlucky here, though. If a rocket drops, that's pretty bad, and I don't want that to happen. Okay, that's bad, too. I'm not gonna get a perfect boss. Yeah, oh well. I'm gonna have an extra phase now, which loses me like 5 seconds, so it's not really a big deal. That rocket phase is the hardest to get 2 hits on. It's extremely tight, the timing for it. So if you get hit by a rocket, or the last rocket rather, the odds of you getting that second hit is not very high. Okay, but that time I did get hit by the rocket, but I was in the air. So there we go, I got the second hit on him. If you're in the air, it cancels the whole little damage animation that you have. Usually when you get hit, that should be the end of the boss, by the way. This next hit is going to be the end. But usually if you get hit... Thank you. Usually if you get hit, you bounce for like 3 or 4 bounces. But if you're in the air, it cancels that. So that's the second dungeon, Ghost Toys. Got the miracle item, we're all set. Now we're going to go to the 4th dungeon, not the 3rd, Gourmet Submarine, which I'm sure is one of the most notable dungeons from this game because it's made entirely of food. Every single thing in there is food except the enemies. But all the platforms and everything are food, and one of the hardest tricks involves food. Well, chopsticks, so utensils. It's nothing but Japanese food, so if you're not a fan of Japanese food, I guess you're in luck.
It depends on one of these things.
Alright, can you want to go to Wendy's after this? Good.
No, thank you.
I need to eat something before
So this is the king I was talking about. He's a weird guy. And that's, I think, Baron his name is? I don't know. Again, it's been so long since I played this game in English. Right now he's calling us weirdos, I think. My memory serves correct. And now we're gonna head off to the witch. So here's where you can make the game forget the count. In 100%, I mean, not in any percent. And we're gonna do a pretty, it's a pretty big skip. It doesn't seem like much, I'm just gonna map glitch, but it is a pretty big skip because it skips getting Goemon's power, which is, if you remember the game, you turn Super Saiyan pretty much. Your hair turns yellow and everything, and you like have a little power-up animation. And it's a pretty cool power, but it has one of the worst minigames of all time. And if you've played this game, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That spinning minigame where you have to keep the dolls from popping the balloons. You have to do it 100%, but thankfully this is not 100%. So I'm map glitching right now. Usually there's a block here that only Super Saiyan Goemon can push, but I despawned it, and now I'm past it. So that skipped that whole thing. That skips like 5 to 6 minutes of minigames and dialogue. So this is home to the most random slide in the game. I have no idea what determines whether or not I clip on it. It's just completely random, so it can kill runs with how bad it can get. Or it can save runs with how good it can be. It's kind of silly. Oh, and I wanted to explain this. If you notice, I'm running into walls everywhere. That speeds up my walking animation ever so slightly. It's a frame saver, but again, it's a speed run, and we need to save the frames. So here's the wall that I need to click through. It is quite the wall. Very well built, hard to get through. That's way too close on that. Again, I have no idea what determines whether or not I go through it. I could be here all day, but that's probably not going to happen. And this is usually what happens when I do any percent attempts of this game. I just lose the run to this. Either that or the 2 slides in Ghost Toys. There we go. It's not that hard of a trick, sadly. It's just random.
Sadly?
Well, I enjoy difficult.
You want it to be hard?
Yeah, I like chain pipe skip. It's not random, it's just hard. So. This is Festival Village. There's Festival Temple Castle and Festival Village, so I often confuse them. It's not very important in any percent. And 100% is kind of important because there's some dolls here, but this isn't 100%. There I do a little wall run, saves frames. And this is the only thing in the game that I've found. And I'm glad that I did, because the old tactic here was a gigantic pain in the ass. I'll explain it as I'm climbing the mountain after I get the glitch, but if you remember the route in this game, like the normal casual route, you're supposed to get weapon upgrades, but we're not going to do that. There's usually a big rock here, but again, map glitch, it's pretty cool. So I'm going to respawn the rock while I'm in it, and that's going to pop me up right past the rock. Now, apparently that is faster than the older method, which was to turn into Mini Abysmaru and just jump up the slope. If you notice, when I entered the area, there was a gigantic slope leading up to the witch's house, because she lives at the top of the mountain. And getting up that slope as Mini Abysmaru is one of the most obnoxious things in the world. I implore you, if you own this game, to try it, because it is one of the worst things I've ever experienced. It's completely random. It takes like a minute and a half. It's just miserable. So here's the witch. This is why we need 300 Rio. But one of the reasons we need 1100 Rio. She talks for a bit and she takes your money. So a bit more on the lore, or the story. So when I skipped that first impact fight, there's a pretty important cutscene before that. If you're familiar with the Goemon games, the old man, I think, is a recurring character. He's like, I think he built Sasuke, and he's like the mentor to Goemon and Abysmaru, who I think are named in the SNES version Dr. Yang and Kid Yin or something. Yep. Okay, cool. I'm glad I remember that. So, what was I saying? The old man, right? His house gets blown up in the cutscene preceding the impact fight. So now he's kind of a spirit. Like, the whole group thinks he's dead, but he's not actually. He's up in the castle in the sky, which hasn't actually happened yet, and will not happen, but it is there. There's a cutscene that shows it going up into the air, but we're not going to see it. You see it in 100%, but this is 100%. So, I got so sidetracked. Talking about the old man. His house blows up, the group thinks he's dead. And yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. So we paid the witch to talk to the old man, and that somehow progresses the plot. Now we're gonna get Mermaid Yay.
How long is
100% is about 2 hours and 20 minutes. Like on a mediocre run, like a marathon run would be that long. The world record is held by me, because I'm the only one who runs it, and it's 2:14:53. And 100% is defined by getting everything on the pause screen. So that's all superpowers, all weapons, all items. Well, weapons are items. All weapons and all weapon upgrades, I think. And I think that's it. And of course, all hearts, obviously. And it's a pretty interesting run. It's a lot different from any percent. Both have their merits. Both have their, ups and downs. So this is the waterfall. If you played this game as a kid, you probably hate this minigame, because it's kind of a pain in the ass. Because it's, on the English version, it's random. However, on the Japanese version, it's not. It is a set pattern, so I can exploit that, obviously, and just complete it in one go. So to get past this extremely difficult minigame, all I do is hold left, and that's it. Now all I have to do is hit A. And as you can see, nothing is gonna hit me. I think eventually a doll will hit me, but if I mash fast enough, which I will, I'll complete it just fine.
Wait,
There she goes. Are there enemies in this game that are fun? Because a lot of them seem to...
Sasuke's one is. I always compare it to one of the stars in Wong's Fortress. I forget the name of it, but you have to climb to the top of the tower and get the star on the top of the tower. Sasuke's minigame is a lot like that. You just climb a big tower, and it's kind of just platforming.
Oh, cool.
So again, long warp animations. We're not really warping that far, but it is worth the warp. So now we are going to Gourmet Submarine, which is my least favorite dungeon, because it has one of the most difficult slides and the chopsticks. And if you're familiar with me in running this game, you'll know what the chopsticks are and how much of a pain in the ass they are. So I'll explain it before I get there, because I don't want to explain it while I'm doing it. So the chopsticks are... basically, all I have to do is run on some chopsticks. That's it. It sounds easy, but it's not. Because the chopsticks are like the collision box on the chopsticks are like 2 pixels wide or something. It's ridiculous how small the chopsticks actually are. And I have to walk in a perfectly straight line on them, hop in 2 giant udon bowls, or udon, I don't know how to pronounce that. So I have to jump in those 2 bowls, I have to jump onto another pair of chopsticks, and I have to, you know, do all that while holding straight on like a 2 pixel wide, what's it called? 2 pixel wide, like, line, basically. Now my HP is pretty low here, I'm gonna grab this dumpling, which will heal me by 1 heart. I have to hit this button to go under the Sea of Japan. Surprisingly, the Sea of Japan is not that big. It's pretty small. I'm sure it's completely geographically inaccurate. And there's also a submarine under here, just chilling.
Is it also frozen?
Yep.
That nose.
Yeah, go figure. I think this is an iceberg. That would make more sense, due to all the shapes and everything. So there's Gourmet Submarine, right behind this ice block. There it is. It's a really short dungeon, but it has 2 insanely annoying tricks. So here we go. What am I doing?
Going back outside, I guess?
Yeah, the controls are inverted, and I'm not very used to them. I mean, I am used to them, but I just messed up for a second. I don't know what I'm doing here. I guess I'm choking. Okay, down. There, I got it. Alright, we got it. We're going up. There we go. Progress. I held the right direction. These guys can hit you. They're completely random. I didn't get hit, thankfully. My HP is actually pretty low for this dungeon. Right. And here's one of the first annoying tricks. I have to do a slide here, and it's a pretty forgiving slide. It'll let you through the wall pretty easily. However, the frame rate here is really bad. And you get to the point where slides are no longer like reactionary, they're just completely muscle memory. So this slide is slightly slower than what's normal. Okay, and I got it there, so that's cool. But that slide is just ever so slightly a different timing, and it's kind of a pain in the ass. Here's another glitch that's Japanese only. If I transform while I'm floating up in the water, I'll do that. I don't know why. I don't have enough Rio for both throws, so that kind of stinks, but whatever. Fire Rio kills those guys in 1 hit, so instead I'm going to have to hit this guy 3 times, unless this guy dropped Rio, which he didn't. And this, as you can see, Fire Rio saves quite a bit of time here, because this guy takes 3 hits to kill, and he has a little animation every single time. Now, the geography on this dumpling is so messed up. Thankfully you didn't experience it there, but it's so bad. Like, it looks like a simple, like, you know, little platform, but it's just not. I don't know what they did to that dumpling, but it is messed up. So if I were really low on Rio, which I am, I'd get Rio here. I only need about 40, that should be enough for the rest of the run. And again, I'm really low on HP, so I'm gonna try and take this room slowly, or safely rather. Usually the fastest method is just go through there and get hit twice, but I don't want to do that. So here's chopsticks. I'm going to focus for a second. Oh my god, I knew that would happen. So yeah, that's chopsticks. You can see how much time it wastes if you don't get it first try. I have a setup for it too, so I need to re-enter, because just gung-hoing it is kind of silly. And I'm gonna get this. I gotta get it. It looks pretty neat. So getting on the chopsticks isn't that much of an issue. Staying on is... Okay. God. It did it again. Ledges in this game are really weird. They extend pretty far out. Right, and this is the last room of the dungeon. So as I said, it's a pretty short dungeon. And coming up is the impact fight. Now, impact is glorious, and if you haven't experienced the impact theme, I'm gonna let you right now, because it is beautiful. However, we have a bit of a cutscene first, where we're introduced to the king and the queen, I think? Or not introduced, but they meet up together. They introduce themselves one by one, and then they meet up in this dungeon. Again, this is the 4th dungeon that you're supposed to do, and we're doing it 3rd. You can actually do it 2nd, too. It's preference. You can do Gourmet Submarine into Ghost Toys or Ghost Toys into Gourmet Submarine. I prefer to do Ghost Toys first because it gets